produced rather at the last minute. And quite frankly, I don't think that's relevant to UKIP today. UKIP is frankly unrecognisable from the UKIP of 5 years ago. I genuinely believe that what has been produced here is a first-class piece of work, which I've read, absorbed and understood, which, you know, it was quite difficult last time round to do that. And I think, you know, quite uniquely, actually getting all the policy proposals, the spending plans, getting the whole thing costed and independently verified is a real feather in Suzanne's cap. Well done. What do I think is the most important part of this manifesto, and without which we wouldn't even contemplate doing a deal of some kind, which doesn't mean joining a coalition, incidentally. Well, it is without doubt that the people of this country have a full, free and fair referendum on our membership of the European Union, not a pro-EU government-led stitch-up.
OK, that was the second question, so that's one more question than was asked at the Lib Dem launch this morning. OK, Chris Hope, is it Daily Telegraph? No? Sorry, my glasses, obviously. There we are.
Oh, God. Chris Hope, Telegraph. Nigel, you say you've read the document fully. Are you happy that the only blackface in the document is on the overseas aid page? And secondly, can I ask you... Nigel. Nigel. Thank you, Nigel. If you can answer the question, please, Nigel. And second thing. Well, I'm sorry. If Nigel can answer the question, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Nigel, what's your advice to former supporters of Tories who are now drifting back to the party, as the opinion polls show? Should they vote tactically to benefit you guys on the election day?
I don't think UKIP voters are the sort of people who will vote tactically in this election simply because they've already made the transition. They've crossed the line. They've decided that established party politics is not for them. And that is why actually support for us is holding incredibly steady, despite the fact it is quite difficult for us to get our main messages out to the British public. But we're going to go on determined to do that. But what I do want to see is I want to see some tactical voting in seats in which UKIP is the challenger. And, the Haywood and Middleton by-election last year showed that all this nonsense we read about UKIP voters all being former Tory voters is arithmetical nonsense. Had more Conservatives used their head in Haywood and Middleton, we would have beaten Labour and we would have won that seat. And I would back that up by saying that still nobody seems to have noticed that in the Rochester and Stroud by-election, Mark Reckless got 42% of the vote in a seat in which UKIP had never stood before. The Conservative vote share was down 14%. Therefore, by a ratio of 2 to 1, Reckless won that by-election with non-Conservative voters. And the key to how well UKIP does on May the 7th is actually very simple. Yes, we attract former Conservatives. Yes, we attract former, particularly old Labour. Yes, we attract some Liberal Democrats. But the absolute key is this. A significant percentage of the UKIP vote in that Rochester and Stroud by-election, and certainly what I've been picking up on doorsteps of our potential vote this time round, comes from people who did not vote in 2010. In many cases, they haven't voted for 20 years. In some cases, they've never voted in their entire lives. But they see UKIP as being a positive party that offers them hope. And our challenge is to get those people out there that don't usually vote but agree with us to go down to the polling station on May the 7th. That is our key to success.
Okay, Laura, ITN.
Newsnight these days, Paul, but thank you very much for crediting my former colleagues. Mr Farage, you are being squeezed in the polls and squeezed very hard. Is the People's Army deserting before the battle? You predicted you would win more than 3 or 4 seats. Do you stand by that? And if you don't, will you have failed? And if I may, you've denied very firmly this morning that you've been putting out feelers to the Conservative Party. A couple of weeks ago, you told Newsnight you were having informal conversations all the time. If they're not feelers, what are they?
Right, yes and yes. And to your last question, we have discussions with people who are in all the other political parties. Yes, of course that goes on. Have I formally, and that's the difference, isn't it? You know, what was being said in one of the newspapers this morning was that formally we've been trying to have, or had been having conversations, and that has not happened, and it won't be happening.
Conversations about potentially working with Conservatives?
Well, if I meet people in a social environment, I'm a very gregarious cove, and I generally speak to them.
Oh, okay. Next question. I'm struggling to see actually. Andy.
Thank you. Andy Bell, 5 News. Mr Farage, would you stop people with HIV entering Britain?
It's very interesting. No, it's a very good question. I thought it was very interesting on the one leaders debate with everybody participating that we're going to have in this election campaign, that when I made the comment that health tourism was costing up to about £1.8 billion a year, and that £1 billion of that was actually very recoverable, and that I thought it was wrong that this government in 2012 had changed the law to say that anybody can fly into Britain, regardless whether they've ever been here before or have any connection with this country, go to a London hospital, have a test for HIV, and if they're proved positive, receive retroviral drugs that are worth more than £20,000 a year. I got the very predictable, politically correct response. I think Ed Miliband tweeted that it was disgusting, and I can't remember quite what Natalie Bennett said. It's always quite difficult to remember what she says. But the point is, do I stand by that? You bet your life I stand by that. And I thought the comments of the Education Secretary, Nicky Morgan, were particularly appropriate. She said that she found my comments stomach-churning. Well, my answer to Nicky Morgan and our politically correct career, professional, political class is this. I find it stomach-churning that we refuse people in their 80s drugs for breast treatment and prostate treatment when we're prepared to spend up to £1 billion a year on health tourists from all over the world. It is time we put the British people first, and I'm confident the vast majority of British people agree with me.
Okay, last question. Paul, I can't see.
Rowena Mason from The Guardian. You've previously said that on immigration, caps and targets aren't necessary at all, but now you've come back and got a cap of 50,000 for skilled immigrants in your manifesto. Why have you changed your mind on this in just a few weeks?
Fine. No, thank you. Let's end this debate on this subject. There is a difference between the number of skilled workers you let into a country under an Australian point system on a sectoral basis where firstly you may need people and secondly they will actually bring something good to this country. There is a very different measure between that and what we've said on that is we don't anticipate it being as much as 50,000 people a year, all right? There is a very, very big difference between that and very arbitrary net migration targets. The only way you can effectively set a net migration target is to be like the former communist countries where you don't allow anyone to leave. Because if you don't do that, it is actually impossible to have any net migration figure. So what we have said is up to 50,000 skilled workers who will pass all of the right tests using the Australian-style point system will be welcome to come into Britain every year. We won't set an arbitrary cap, but we will aim to bring immigration in this country back to normality, back to that figure that it ran from, in fact, up until 1998, when Mandelson and Blair and the others decided they'd send out search parties to find as many people as possible to come to Britain. But up until 1998, you know, we had between 20 and 50, perhaps an average of 30,000 people a year net coming to Britain. Actually, UKIP is not offering anything radical on immigration at all, far from it. What UKIP wants to do is to be like nearly 200 countries around the world. We want to be a normal country with a sensible level of net migration, which will lead to immigration ceasing to be a big issue in British politics and greater integration within our communities and our society.
Okay, thank you very much for coming here today, ladies and gentlemen. I think today has proven really the journey of professionalism UKIP has been on since 2010. We're buoyant, we're confident, and we believe we will make great strides on May the 7th, on the day of the general election. Thank you very much.